Welcome to Igniting the Worldwide Spiritual Wildfire We Need Now, a Call to Action Global Online Summit. My name is Joan and I am your host, creator, and producer of the Spiritual Wildfire Summit, and I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you. There are people from more than 30 countries that have registered for this summit. I am so grateful that you are here. And as the host and creator and producer of the summit, I had the really great honor of interviewing all 23 luminaries, all of the speakers that agreed to participate in this summit. And I have to tell you, it was an honor interviewing each of these luminaries, and it really felt like I was receiving a personal attunement or a personal initiation while interviewing them. So be prepared to be initiated and attuned yourself over these next 6 days. You know, if you're here, it's because you are a visionary. You know in your bones that there is more to life than what we currently experience. And perhaps you even feel the pain of the epic times that we live in and believe that there is more to life. You desire empowering tools to help you remain centered and calm and balanced during these challenging times that we live in. Or perhaps you say you crave a sacred community of like-minded activists, people who call themselves rebels, revolutionaries, change agents, spiritual warriors, cultural midwives, light workers. It really doesn't matter what you call yourself, because you know that you're here to help shepherd in a new world. I believe that you're also here because you deeply love the earth, just like me, and you want to embody the truth, beauty, and magic of the way life was truly meant to be lived. I think you're here too because you believe that a world based on joy, compassion, wisdom, and justice for all, it's not only possible, it's our destiny. I also believe that there's a part of you that if you go really deep down inside, that believes this new world can happen now in our lifetime. So thank you so much for being here. So it's really been a labor of love to put this summit together, and I'm so grateful for the technology that has made this possible. That's made it possible for all of us to share in this deep wisdom over the next 6 days. So I'm grateful for the technology, but for now, I want to ask you to imagine with your very creative imagination that you're no longer looking into a computer, that you're actually sitting around, all of us from all these 30 different countries plus are sitting around a sacred campfire. Don't ask me how we do it, but we do it. And I have this fire lit in my wood stove here right now to help you imagine that you are sitting around a campfire. And if you want, you can actually pause this video and go and light a candle to actually bring you closer to the magic of what fire really is. So imagine, as we're sitting around this sacred campfire, that there's a quiet calm that settles over all of us. And you know, sometimes as we look into a campfire, we're actually transported into another reality sometimes. The fire can feel mesmerizing. We begin to deepen into the magic and the beauty and the expansiveness of what a fire really entails. So I'm going to invite you to feel the warmth of this fire, to feel its magic, its power of transformation, and to actually surrender to the fire's mystery. Get close to the spirit of fire. Feel its magic. And so as we all sit around this sacred campfire, I want to share with you how the spiritual wildfire actually came about. Well, somehow I was guided to use this metaphor of a wildfire. And when I heard this guidance, I was like, really? Isn't that insensitive, especially now as we are witnessing, and for some of us actually experiencing the power of a fire raging out of control and causing destruction in areas like Alaska and the Amazon and California and Australia. I mean, when we see, and for some of us again witness what's occurring with these wildfires, our hearts can break with all of the destruction that we're seeing from loss of species as well as loss from humans too. So why would I conjure up another image of a wildfire? But I stayed with this metaphor. And through it, I have come to believe that a spiritual wildfire is far more than just a metaphor. And it's in fact something that we need now more than ever, because the magic, mystery, and power of transformation that we see within a fire is the same magic, power of transformation and rebirth that we each have within us. We all have a sacred fire within us. And unlike the flames of this cozy, warm stove right here that keeps me warm in northern Michigan, and it'll eventually go out, the flame within each one of us is in an eternal flame, and it will never goes out. It will never go out. But back to these raging wildfires that we're seeing right now. What if these raging wildfires are a desperate message from Mother Earth? She's doing everything possible that she can to shake us up, to wake us up out of our stupor. So what if these wildfires are a desperate call for us to restore balance, balance within ourselves, balance with each other, balance with nature, and most of all, balance with that sacred flame that is patiently waiting to really guide us? What if it's Mother Earth's message to restore this balance to this fire, and to really to make us, to help us realize that together we can collectively ignite a worldwide spiritual wildfire to restore this balance. But like any fire, there are certain conditions that are really needed to ignite a wildfire. And I've come to believe that there are 5 conditions needed for a spiritual wildfire. The first one is it's time to remember the truth of who we really are. The second one, it's the world is as we dream it. The third one is action. And in fact, the spiritual ideal of this era is action. The fourth is self-care. And the fifth is to believe with certainty in the light, to believe that there is always light after the dark. So I'm just going to briefly go into each one of these 5 conditions in a little more depth. So what does it mean to remember the truth of who we really are? And why is that so important right now? Well, as if in a trance, we have forgotten that at our core, we are spiritual light beings. And that sentiment is not just an airy-fairy woo-woo sentiment. I mean, quantum physicists are now confirming what ancient spiritual masters have known all along, that at our core, we are spiritual light. We are far more than just skin and bones, and our purpose is far greater than just waking, eating, consuming, and sleeping. In fact, we are nothing less than divine in nature, and it's time for us to really remember this profound truth, because when we do, when we claim this spiritual birthright, we'll remember that there is nothing that we cannot do in co-creation with divine source energy. Our spiritual light is our greatest superpower, and it's truly waiting patiently to be acknowledged, claimed, and used to create, as Charles Eisenstein says so eloquently, the more beautiful world that we know is possible in our hearts. But for centuries, we've been wrapped up in this story of separation, and this story is based on lies. It tells us that we are limited, that solutions are unattainable, and that we dare not dream a new dream. It tells us that we were born separate, separate from each other, separate from nature, and even separate from the divine light that we were born with. But can you feel it? The winds are beginning to shift. And as they shift, they're starting to fan the flames of this spiritual wildfire that is beginning to move across this planet. And you're here, a part of it. You in a way, you have signed up to be a part of it. And there is a new story that is actually emerging as these fans are these fires are, these flames are fanned. And in fact, it's actually a very old story, and it's called, I call it, the story of our awakened hearts. In this new story of our awakened hearts, it's grounded in the feminine values of compassion, wisdom, justice, and joy. It knows that we are truly all connected to one another, to nature, and of course, to that eternal flame that is the essence of who we are. The story of our awakened hearts also believes that we are on the precipice, that we are preparing for the greatest transformation we have yet to experience as human beings, and that is our ability to embody the truth of who we really are. You know, on occasion, we may receive a hint of this more beautiful world as we gaze out into a sunset, as we see another human being acting out of deep kindness, or we see people collectively rising up in the face of injustice. You know, although incredibly uplifting, these stories are actually isolated reminders. They don't adequately convey what is possible once a majority of us come together and actually claim our spiritual light. So imagine a world where trees, oceans, animals, and mountains had the same right as us, human beings. Imagine a world where each one of us were encouraged to share our gifts and live in joy. Imagine a world where governments used compassion and love for all decisions that they made. Impossible? Far from it, because we were actually born knowing how to do this. And as we remember the truth of who we really are, and as the flames of this spiritual wildfire grow stronger, we are preparing the grounds for nothing less than a quantum evolutionary leap. You know, a few years ago, I received a glimpse, a hint of what this quantum evolutionary leap might look like when I was on a retreat. And my shamanic teacher invited each one of us to embark on what's called a dismemberment journey. So what is a dismemberment journey? Well, I love this definition by Jane Burns, a shaman. She describes this journey as a death without dying. The shamanic adventurer is sometimes torn from limb to limb, thrown from a cliff, burned in a fire, or drowned in sea. Sounds terrifying, doesn't it? But it's important to remember that dismemberment is a symbolic journey. And it's taken to help to anyone who takes it, it helps them to release anything that no longer serves them, release anything that is impeding the fullest expression of their life. So I want to read to you what I wrote down from this journey that I took. I want to read to you what I wrote in my journal. And it goes like this. It was a dreary gray afternoon, perfect for journeying into multidimensional realms of reality to receive wisdom from the compassionate spirits and helping guides. 8 of us from the ages of 25 to 70 gathered in a small cabin in the woods of northern Indiana. As we settled in, some sitting and some laying down, found myself curious and excited. What message was I to receive? What would my dismemberment look like? Would it be too much for me to experience? Would I be able to understand the significance of this journey? What if I received nothing? With my left brain on overdrive again, Jeff, our instructor, began a deep, repetitive beat on his buffalo skin drum. I laid down, simply set my intention to experience a dismemberment journey, and was almost startled by how fast the scene unfolded. The process of dismemberment was swift. Within a period of 3 seconds, the element of wind unmercifully whipped through me and around me, scattering every part of me to all corners of the earth, except my heart. My heart would not be moved. It refused to be shattered or scattered to the winds, but there is nothing that can stop the forces of dismemberment, and typically nothing is spared. As if on cue, a big, hairy, monster-like giant came stomping over, ruthlessly grabbed my heart, sucked the blood out of it, crushed it under his feet, and then discarded it. With nothing left of my physical body, I became pure spirit, pure energy and motion galloping on a horse. Then my spirit let go of the horse and I moved with such freedom and joy, so much freedom, so much joy. It was time for my guides to reassemble me, and I realized that I would be reassembled minus my illusions and fears, and particularly the ones that kept me small, limited, and doubting the fullest expression of my light. As they began to put me back together, I immediately objected. But I'm a human being. I cannot be human without my small self. It can't be done. It's my self-limiting beliefs that make me human. To this, the guide said, it's time for human beings to realize the magnitude of the transformation occurring now. Those of you who are awake and engaged in this process of this great shift are collectively creating a bridge. As you cross this bridge, every step each of you takes brings you closer, your entire species closer to your fullest potential. You are in the process of completely and collectively letting go of your small self. You are evolving from Homo sapien into Homo luminous. You are remembering your true nature as spiritual light beings, and as you do, you create heaven on earth. Be fearless. Let love and light guide you. 15 minutes later, the repetitive drumming slowed down and then stopped. And we gathered all of our energy back into that small cabin in the woods, into our bodies, and into the present moment. I still remember coming out of that journey thinking, really? Homo sapien into Homo luminous? Heaven on earth? That's impossible, right? Now, in our lifetime, never. But I had to ask myself, were those thoughts the product of generations of stewing in a consensus trance that forbids this kind of thinking? What if we really are in the midst of the greatest transformation our species has yet to experience? What if every personal transformation builds a stronger and steadier bridge for all of us? What if heaven on earth is our ability to wake up and claim the divine light of who we are? What if it's our ability to look first into the light of another person's eyes rather than rushing to judgment? What if it's our ability to prioritize love over fear? What if it's our ability to create a socially just and compassionate and healthy world for all beings? Too fantastic? Unbelievable? Definitely not. Especially if we remember the second condition that's needed to ignite a worldwide spiritual wildfire. And again, it's one that spiritual teachers and masters have been teaching and sharing for centuries. And the second condition is this: the world is as we dream it. We all have dreams, right? some big and some little, but all of us are born with dreams inside of us. I remember being a young, enthusiastic college student getting ready to study abroad in Paris and London for the first time. You can imagine my excitement. I came from a family that was always trying to make ends meet. So this was a big leap for me to study abroad. I remember that as I was getting ready to board the plane and I was saying goodbye to my parents, I proudly declared, it just so happened that I was leaving on January 1st, my birthday, and I proudly declared to my parents, I'm going to make sure that I start every year with a trip abroad. And I can still remember seeing the look on my parents' faces and my father saying, are you crazy? Who do you think you are? But I also know that fortunately, I realized that those limitations were the same limitations that my father inherited from his father, and his father from his father, and so on. And I did not let those limitations spoil my own dreams. If I had, my life would not have been blessed with all of the amazing adventures that it has been blessed with. But here's the thing, if we don't give ourselves permission to dream, it's impossible to imagine a new reality. We stay stuck in the same reality. Our dreams are the fuel for the more beautiful world that we know is possible. They are the seeds of transformation. And without dreams, nothing changes. It's our ability to dream, and more importantly, our ability to believe in those dreams that really make a difference. And today, in these dark times, it takes a mighty, powerful, and courageous spiritual warrior who dares to dream, who dares to shake off the consensus trance and use their creativity and imagination to believe that the way life is today is not the way it was meant to be, and to believe that the story of our awakened hearts is possible now in our lifetime. It takes someone with great vision to believe that we will emerge out of this collective dark night of the soul, because the grip of the consensus trance is strong. It's designed to keep us asleep and to doubt our ability to dream. In fact, it teaches us not to dream. But underneath all of those heavy layers of the consensus trance, we're all visionaries at heart. I love this quote from Alberto Villoldo, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, in his book, Courageous Dreaming. And this is what he writes. He writes, whether you realize it or not, we are all dreaming the world into being. Whether what we're engaging in is not the sleeping dream we're familiar with, but the waking dream we craft with our eyes open. When we're unaware that we all have the power to co-create reality with the help of the universe itself, that power slips away from us and our dream turns into a nightmare. We begin to believe we're the victims of an unknown and frightening creation that we're unable to influence or change. Events seem to control us or trap us. So the key is to wake up from this nightmare and to dream a new dream, to simply dream a new dream. Sounds like child's play, doesn't it? Naive, right? On the contrary, dreaming a new dream into being is by far the most powerful thing we can do to create the world that we know is possible. And in fact, it's a necessary condition to ignite the worldwide spiritual wildfire. So if you find yourself shutting down your dreams or doubting them or believing they're foolish or believing that nothing can change, remind yourself that's exactly what the consensus trance wants. It wants us to stay stuck in this collective dark night of the soul. And it most certainly doesn't want us to believe that we have the power within us to co-create a new world. Pessimism and self-doubt are self-fulfilling prophecies. So trust your heart when it whispers to you that we are capable of dreaming a new dream into being. Especially, we're capable of even miracles, especially when outward appearances seem otherwise. So I want to share with you this story that demonstrates this idea of dreaming a new world into being. And it's a story that was written by Cory Booker in his book, United. And it's not an endorsement of Cory Booker by any means whatsoever. And he is a good guy. It's just a great story that demonstrates my point. So during the 1980s, Cory Booker was living on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Newark, New Jersey. And he had set up a meeting to meet with Ms. Virginia Jones, who was she was the president of the Tenants Association of Brick Towers, two 16-story low-income buildings. And as he was reciting all of his credentials to Ms. Jones, she interrupted him and said, "You say you want to help, but first you need to tell me something. You need to describe to me what you see around you. Describe the neighborhood. Tell me what you see." So as he described the abandoned buildings in the neighborhood that in his words screamed for help, looked like a war zone, and was overrun with drugs, Jones interrupted him and she said this, "The world you see outside yourself is a reflection of what you have inside of you. If you're one of those people that only sees darkness and despair, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you see hope and opportunity, if you're stubborn enough to every time you open your eyes and see love or the face of God, then you can be a change agent here. Only then can you make a difference." And she walked away. So Cory Booker wrote in his book, he wrote, "Okay, grasshopper, thus endeth the lesson." So we need to ask ourselves, what is it that we see when we look out into the world, into our communities, into the countries that we live in? Do we see an outdated, dysfunctional paradigm that is crumbling? Excellent. That's a great sign that we're awake. But the question is, how much airtime are we giving to fueling the story of our awakened hearts? When we gather with friends, how much time is spent droning on about what's wrong with the world versus the incredible possibility and potential that we have right now to co-create a new world? Yes, more of us must wake up to a stark reality and the incredible challenges that we're faced with. But if that is all we see, that is all we will continue to see. Deep at our core, we are all dreaming the same world. We all have the same dreams. For some of us, those dreams have been ignored or ridiculed, but it's really time for us to remember all of the dreams and to dream big, if needed, for yourself and most definitely for the world. It's time for us to reach for the stars and dream the biggest dream that we are capable of dreaming. So there you have it, the first conditions needed to ignite the worldwide spiritual wildfire. One, to remember the truth of who we really are, and two, the world is as we dream it. So the second condition, the third condition needed to ignite the worldwide spiritual wildfire is action. And in fact, the spiritual ideal of the era that we live in is action. And I love this quote from Van Jones, and he says this: "It's in the convergence of spiritual people becoming active and active people act of people becoming spiritual, that the hope of humanity now rests. In other words, if what's needed is nothing less than the reinvention of human civilization, as Nina Simon says in her interview with me, then spirituality without action isn't enough. Likewise, action without the fortification of spirituality always results in short-term gains. History demonstrates that the most powerful methods we have to create sea changes is through the marriage of spirituality and action, from Wangari to Wangari Maathai, to Martin Luther King Jr., to Julia Butterfly Hill. It's the movements that are grounded and marry the concepts, the ideas of spirituality and action that result in evolutionary leaps of social and environmental justice, leaps that last. And those movements, they're on the rise again. And no one is too small or insignificant to make a difference. We each have a purpose. If we are alive today, we are here for a purpose. And that purpose is to help shepherd in this more beautiful world that we know is powerful. And every single action that is grounded in our spiritual light, doesn't matter how big or small, brings all of us one step closer to living the story of the awakened hearts. So, I want to share with you, there's in my book, my forthcoming book, I share with you many examples of how we can take action to wed spirituality with action. But I want to share with you one in particular right now. And you may be surprised by this idea. But do you remember saying the phrase abracadabra as a child? Maybe you even had a spiritual, a magical wand in your hand. But our words, abracadabra, is actually, it's derived from an old Aramaic phrase, which means abrac ad habra. And it literally means that as I speak, I create. In other words, as we speak, we create the world around us. Our words are like incantations that actually create the world around us. Whenever any one of us has the courage to speak up and literally take a stand, we transform the world around us. Every word we speak has the ability to either raise or lower the world's vibration, to either increase or decrease the light. Every time we speak, it's like a pebble that drops out into a pond and ripples out across the world. That's a lot of responsibility and creative power that we each have. No wonder Oprah, she said, "Oh, speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have." Especially today, truth is incredibly important because as we see, it's being obscured by everything from technology to world leaders. These days, truth is being manipulated as a commodity for personal gain like it never has. So one of the best ways that we each can restore the truth is by having the guts and courage to speak our own truth. By doing so, we step into the highest expression of our personal power, and it adds tremendous fuel to the spiritual wildfire. And also, when any one of us do it, it provides an example and gives each one of us the courage to do the same. But silence also speaks volumes. If we choose to remain silent about the things that matter to us, we are still affecting the world. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. If you're nervous or, you know, nervous or afraid to speak up, I understand your nervousness. It takes courage and conviction, and it's only been within the last few years that I've had the courage to actually speak up myself, to speak my truth. And as women, it can be particularly challenging, but it's women's voices that especially need to be heard right now. So speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. Well, what happens when an individual breaks her silence and speaks up? Well, she can become the tipping point and start a worldwide movement. We can look at the Me Too movement. That movement was started with just one tweet, and it spread like wildfire to 85 countries. Time magazine called this phenomenon, they called it the silence breakers, and they placed this movement on the cover of Time magazine. And this designation honored not just one individual, but all of the women who spoke up. And Time magazine, in their words, spoke of, quote, their unprecedented ability to enact rapid change. Unprecedented ability to enact rapid change just by speaking up. And we can also look to Greta Thunberg more recently, but there are hundreds of thousands of individuals that are speaking up and creating worldwide spiritual wildfires all over this planet. So how do we exercise one of the most powerful tools available to us? Well, what if we all became silence breakers in our own communities on whatever issue that mattered most to us? Well, how do we do this? Well, at the dinner table, with ourselves, with our partners, before city council, with a brother-in-law who drives you crazy, by writing a book, starting a blog, with our neighbors, by courageously expressing our opinions when it flies in the face of the prevailing winds, with the raging liberal or the hardcore conservative. Of course, this takes practice, but each time we do it, it gets easier. And every time one of us has the guts to become a silence breaker, we break the trance. We disrupt a trend. We disrupt a trend, a slippery slope into the fall of democracy. But as we speak, let's let our words be illuminated with a spiritual light in our hearts. Yes, let's let our voices be uncensored and unfiltered, but also tempered with the love and the joy we envision for the new world. Let every word we speak be saturated with the truth that each one of us is connected to the whole. This is compassion in action. This is spirituality wedded to action. This is the kind of fire, that a spiritual fire that brings us one step closer to the story of our awakened hearts. All right, so the fourth condition needed to ignite a worldwide spiritual wildfire is self-care. And I'm not going to go too deeply into this because one of my gifts to you is a 30-minute free online class that you can download right here below the video. And this class is called 3 Essential Self-Care Tools for the 21st Century Spiritual Warrior. But here's what I'll briefly share. Without self-care, the spiritual wildfire we want to ignite will smolder. It will burn out. You can think of self-care as spiritual ballast. In a ship, ballast is what keeps the ship centered, and it keeps it from capsizing and tipping over. It's the same for us. The more spiritual ballast we have, the stronger, more centered and calm we are. So self-care, especially in these challenging times, is essential. So if you are called to help right the ship and restore balance, There is nothing more important than you can do than to practice self-care. Self-care in and of itself is an act of service. All right, so the fifth condition needed to ignite a worldwide spiritual wildfire is to believe with certainty in the light, to know that there is always light after the dark. Why do I have such complete faith and trust in this light? Because at one point I felt like my light had gone out. Some call this experience a dark night of the soul. And for me, it lasted on and off for about a year. And there was nothing in particular that initiated this spiritual crisis. But my dark night stretched me in ways that I never felt possible. If you're experiencing a dark night of the soul, maybe you know what this feels like. Discomfort was an understatement. Dark thoughts and fears, my own, as well as those that are rampant in a society that has fear as its primary fuel, would enter into my mind unannounced. Things got so dark and confusing that I wondered if life really was worth living. I considered joining a monastery or even medicating myself, anything to release what felt like mental torture. In the end, I chose none of those options. And that's not to say that medication can be helpful. It can, but I didn't choose that route. Ultimately, I was forced, or perhaps a better way to say it is that I finally surrendered into the undying faith in my own light, as well as to the light in the sky that ultimately powers it, and to deeply feel in my bones and in my heart that there is nothing more powerful than the light of who I am. Through this faith, as well as through the support from two incredible healers, I was guided out of my own dark night and back into the light that in fact was always present. Perhaps you've experienced your own dark night of the soul. Maybe it was the unending ocean of grief that you felt from a child who died, or the unexpected collapse of a marriage or a partnership. Or maybe you were at the top of your game and at work and were suddenly fired for no good reason. Any of these experiences can initiate a deep descent into the darkness that makes us question the very meaning of our existence. But ask yourself, did that grief ultimately crack you open to love in ways that you never even realized were possible? Did the pain you experienced create a resilience in you that made you even stronger? Are you the same person that you were before your dark night of the soul? And if you still are in the midst of a dark night, trust that you will emerge stronger. Get the help that can really make a difference. In my dark night, I realized the only way out of it was through it. I began to stop resisting the dark thoughts and even began to question them. But most importantly, I surrendered to the light. Again, this involved a deep letting go of my ego and a complete trust in my light. Ultimately, my spiritual crisis, as John of the Cross writes, it actually was a cause for celebration, because it is only when we get out of our own way that the divine can take over and fill us with love and light. I share my personal journey with you because it feels to me, and maybe it feels to you too, that we are collectively experiencing a global dark night of the soul. As we look around our world today, there's no doubt that we are in throes of the collective dark night. You know, we're seeing a collective shadow. It's being revealed in unprecedented ways. And it's caused by a spiritual crisis that often happens when societies are deeply out of balance and where fear is the predominant driving energy. It's in societies where we've lost our connection to our spiritual light. But just as we are able to move through personal dark nights and return to the light that is in fact always present, it's important for us to believe and have faith that we too can move through this global dark night of the soul and come out stronger for it, because the light is always more powerful than the dark. The more of us who can remember this truth of who we really are, have the courage to dream a new dream, and actually take action, the more quickly the nightmare that we are experiencing can more quickly shift into the story of our awakened hearts. So here's some questions for you. What if the only way out of this collective dark night is through it, and to believe with certainty there is light after the dark? What if the global dark night is an invitation to each one of us to surrender and trust in our personal light like never before? What if this experience, as horrible as it is on even the darkest days, is helping us to once and for all no longer rely on any of our old tricks for maintaining our separation from the light, as John of the Cross says? And what if it's an initiation, an invitation for all of us to understand the power of collectively uniting our lights and transmute the dark into the light? So even though the darkness may numb us, it may overpower us with grief and deep pain, now is not the time to give up. Now is not the time to believe this false belief that nothing ever changes. Our emotion can be used as the fuel, as the energy to help spread the worldwide spiritual wildfire. So there it is, the 5 conditions needed to ignite a worldwide spiritual wildfire. Number 1, remember the truth of who we really are. 2, the world is as we dream it. 3, the spiritual ideal of our era is action, the importance of taking action no matter how big or small it is. 4, the absolute necessity of self-care. And 5, to believe with certainty in the light, to believe in the divine fire within each one of us. The more quickly we can embody each of these 5 conditions, the more quickly the right conditions are created worldwide to ignite this wildfire. So I want to close. I want to close with a story, and I love this story. It's been floating around on the internet, and I don't know who the author is, but it's a good story, and it works for this talk. And it goes like this. According to an ancient legend, there was once a time when all human beings were gods. But we so abused our divinity that Brahma, the chief god, decided to take away our divinity. And you can substitute any name for the chief god that you want in this story. But Brahma, the chief god, decided to take away our divinity. Where to hide the divinity was the question. So Brahma called a council of all of the gods to figure out where was the best place to hide this human divinity. So the gods said, let's hide it deep in the earth, for humans will never find it there. But Brahma said, you know what? Humans will figure out a way to dig deep into the earth and they'll find it. So then the gods thought, let's sink it deep into the ocean. They'll never find it there. But Brahma, the chief god, he thought once again and said, you know what? Human beings will learn how to dive deep into the ocean and they'll find it. Then the god said, let's hide it on the highest mountaintop. They'll never find it there, right? But Brahma, once again, he thought, he's like, no, that won't work either. Human beings, they'll know. They'll know how to climb to the highest top of the mountains, and they'll find it there. The God said, we have no idea where to hide this divinity because human beings, they'll find it once again. So Brahma thought long and hard, and he said, I know, I've got just the right place to hide this divinity, this beautiful light. Let's hide it deep within them. They'll never look to find it there. And all of the gods agreed this was the perfect hiding place, and the deed was done. And ever since that time, us human beings, we've been digging and diving and climbing and searching for the divinity within us, our greatest gift, always searching, never able to find it until now. Who knows what we did to incur all that wrath from the gods? Who knows why the gods never wanted us to find our divinity? But what if this story is misguided as the story of Adam and Eve? What if we never left the garden? What if the garden is actually inside of us and has been inside of us all along? And what if this divinity that we were born with refuses to no longer be hidden? And finally, what if we are the gods we've been waiting for, on the verge of collectively waking up to our divine birthright? In this day and age, I'm only human doesn't work anymore. It's time to stop fooling ourselves into believing that we are mere mortals. Yes, we are human, but by the very nature of being human, we're divine. And within our spiritual light are all of the directions that we need. There's a clear and accessible blueprint always available to us to help us co-create with divine source energy, heaven on earth. What an awesome responsibility we each have to collectively birth in and anchor in the story of our awakened hearts. How lucky we are to be alive during this unique cusp in history as we prepare to express our fullest potential, grounded in the authentic power of our spiritual light. It's time to make the story of our awakened hearts a reality. We've had the capacity to do this since forever. What's different now is that we are collectively waking up and remembering our magnificence. And when we combine our spiritual light with activism grounded in compassion, and we collectively do this, there is nothing we cannot do. So I dare you to let go of appearances and to dream big for yourself, for your community, and for the world. Come with me on this adventure. It's one that we are destined to take, and the time is now. So as I close, I want to remind you of the gifts, the free gifts that I'm giving away right below my interview right here. One is a discovery call that you can enter into a drawing, and I'm going to pull some names, and 5 or 10 of you will be, you'll have a discovery call with me, how to ignite your inner fire and live the life of your dreams. The second thing is that free mini online course that I'm giving away, 3 essential tools, 3 essential self-care tools for the 21st century spiritual warrior. And the third one is I'm inviting you to a free webinar. If you're interested after you hear this Spiritual Wildfire Summit and are wondering, what's my next step? What can I do to continue the momentum that's been created in this Spiritual Wildfire Summit? I'm inviting you to a webinar that will share with you how you can dive deeper into these ideas, and also how you can register for a class that I'll be offering in March. And I want to remind you that each of these speakers also have free gifts, and that they will be speaking over the next six days. So again, I want to thank you so much for being here. And as we part, I want you to, you can see that the fire in my wood stove is slowly dying out. But if you remember nothing else from this talk, remember that there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that can extinguish the fire within you, that can extinguish the divine light that you have within you. And then this divine light is so ready and willing to be expressed now to create the world that we know is possible in our lifetime now. So I just want to say many thanks for listening, and many blessings.